Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to once again go into the suggestions passed to developers for November of 2023, and this time we're going to have a look at the naval forces and also helicopters. One of the weird things about this is there's actually two subtrees that are involved, the Thai Naval Forces subtree and also the Thai Helicopter subtree. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make that its own video, so we'll kind of do just the Thai subtrees together, because obviously there is quite a lot of content there. And also, for helicopters, there is another Japanese one, which is just a standard AH-1S with a weeb skin on it, which has exactly the same story as about 3 or 4 or 5 of them which have already been passed. So I'm not going to go through that one. You know the story of it. It's as simple as that. There's not really much else to say apart from it is a slightly different anime skin, and it was used for promotional purposes. So not going to bother with that one, but let's get into the rest. The first vehicle is the Project 48 destroyer leader, the Kiev. In 1935, as part of the ocean-going fleet plan, the USSR commissioned the Italian Otto shipyard to design a large, high-speed destroyer, build the first prototype, and then assist Soviet shipyards to build their own. This was known as Project 20 and resulted in the Tashkent. However, it was soon discovered that the Italian design was incompatible with Soviet shipbuilding. Instead, Soviet designers used the Italian design to finish an ongoing project, the Project 48, a project for an improved Project 1/Project 38 destroyer leader. And in the third 5-year plan, 8 ships were ordered, 3 for the Black Sea Fleet and 5 for the Baltic one. The first 3 ships were laid down in 1939, but in 1940, the Navy reevaluated the project and ordered all remaining ships and the one laid down to be cancelled, with only the 2 for the Black Sea Fleet to be completed in 1942. Additionally, the Project 35 and 47 destroyers were projected to be ordered in 41 and 42, which were generally superior to the 48. Work on the 2 ships continued until it was disrupted by, of course, Operation Barbarossa and the German invasion of the USSR. Kiev was to be the lead ship of the class and was laid down in Shipyard 198, Marty, in Nikolaev. It was launched in 1940 and was about 48.9% complete at the start of Operation Barbarossa. Along with the less complete Yerevan, they were evacuated from Nikolaev to first Sevastopol, then various other ports until they arrived at Batumi in Georgia. There they would wait out until the war, until Nikolaev was liberated, and in 1944 they were towed back to be finished. The Navy wished for a modernized design, and revised one was made in 1948, with more efficient engines and also better anti-aircraft weaponry, with this design being called the Project 48K. However, by then, the modern Project 30 BIS destroyers were being produced, and the Navy decided it wasn't wise to waste resources for 2 unique and more or less obsolete ships, and all work was cancelled in 1950. The Kiev had eventually been sunk during fleet exercises in 1946, but was refloated the next year and transferred to the shipyard in Nikolaev and resumed construction. In 1952, the Kiev was removed from the shipyard and spent 3 years laid up. Then it was transferred to the Caspian Flotilla for testing purposes, and in 1962, it was expended as a target ship, being shot by a P-35 cruise missile without a warhead. The missile pierced the ship, and then it sank in 3 minutes. The next one is the IJN Takao class heavy cruiser, the Maya, from 1944. So this article that is written is 5,000 words long, and there is a lot of completely worthless information in it, basically talking about a lot of the setup of the vehicle and also at the same time different timings of when it died in 1944. But basically what you have here is a vehicle which was built around the idea of the Washington Naval Treaty, just like most vehicles were at the time. It had access to some pretty pretty large guns, which was quite nice, 4 dual 203mm with 6 dual 127s, and then it also had 13 triple mounted 25mm, 27 single 25s, and also sets of torpedo tubes too. This was its December 1944 modernization, basically. It had 1,100 crew on it, and also had some pretty decent armor on it, but nothing to blow anything away. The vehicle had a pretty standard history. It was built by Japan, tested a lot by different entities, was used during the Second World War and did not survive the Second World War, and eventually got destroyed in 1944. France's is the last French cruiser, the FS Colbert or C611. I'm going to read this verbatim because some of these are very tough to read, unfortunately. The FS Colbert is a one-off design anti-aircraft cruiser built for the Marine Nationale and was built in the 1950s. Her design is based off the Degas, which itself was an anti-aircraft cruiser. However, though they were somewhat similar in design, the Degas was originally laid down in 1939 and was supposed to be an improvement over the LA or the La Galissoniere, I think, class light cruiser. However, due to the outbreak of the Second World War, the Degas would only be finished in the 1950s to a new design. In comparison, the Colbert, which was the following cruiser to enter service and was not a conversion, as she was an improvement over her predecessor. In that whole paragraph, there is one single comma and no other punctuation. In terms of armament, the Colbert would have the same amount of weapons. However, Colbert would last longer in service, as in the early 1970s she was converted into a guided missile cruiser, which saw all the 127mm guns removed, as well as a number of the 57mm guns and 2 100 guns installed instead of one SAM launcher located at the rear, as well as various radar systems and ECM systems. And in the 1980s she received anti-ship missiles. No punctuation in that one. Whew. Colbert was laid down on the 9th of June 1954. She was launched on the 24th of March 1956 and was commissioned on May the 5th, 1959, and was first assigned as flagship of the French Mediterranean Squadron, being based out of Toulon. Her career would be relatively uneventful, though. She sailed to South America in 1964 when President Charles de Gaulle was visiting and helped with its journey, and in 1967 filled a similar role in 1967 when he visited Canada for the Expo 67. In 1970, Colbert began the process of undergoing a modernization and conversion, which saw her armament heavily reworked, with all her 5-inch guns being removed and 2 100 guns installed at the front of the ship. Additionally, the 57mm gun battery was reduced in number. With the conversion into a guided missile cruiser, she received one twin-arm launcher at her rear, which used the Mazurka surface-to-air system. This was completed in 1972, and followed this, she was based in Brest from 1973 to 76, and then in Toulon. In 1980, she saw her missile armament increase with 4 MM-38 Exocet anti-ship missile launchers, and in 1988 she represented France at the bicentennial festivities in Australia. In her last year of service, in 1991, she took part in the Gulf War, which was the only time she ever saw any combat. However, on the 24th of May, she was decommissioned. However, she would be turned into a museum ship in 1993. However, she would meet her end in the 2000s, as the museum could not handle the financial situation due to the lack of funding, as well as from pressure from the municipal government and local interest groups, according to the sources. And she was closed in 2006, and she was placed in mothball in 2007, and was then had her parts cannibalized for the helicopter carrier Jeanne d'Arc, before in 2010 the Jeanne d'Arc had been taken out of service. She would only last for only another 6 years before she was towed away and was sold for scrap in 2016. So just as a point, like, going through these articles can be quite hard sometimes. Punctuation is important. I know people don't think it is. That's fine. It is. But please stop using the word however. Just get rid of it out of your vocabulary. Just remove it and replace it with punctuation, please. However is a awful word to use because it's basically there as a joiner, but the problem is it just is useless compared to anything else. For helicopters, we have the Mi-171, but instead for China. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Mi-171 was introduced by the Russian Federation as one of their export utility helicopters. The helicopter itself is a direct export version of the Russian Mi-8 AMT, which itself is a slightly modified Mi-8 MTV produced by the Ulan-Ude aviation plant instead of the Kazam helicopters. In 2007, the last batch of Mi-171s built in Ulan-Ude were delivered to China, and in that same year, production of further Mi-171 helicopters was started in Sichuan, China. In the mid-2000s, images of an armed Chinese Mi-171 circulated on the internet. Since the Mi-171 delivered by Ulan-Ude were all intended for civilian general purposes, it's likely that these armed variants were modified by the Sichuan helicopter plant to carry rocket pods on each side. Ever since the formation of the Russian Federation, China has been an active buyer of Russian Mi-17Vs and also Mi-171 helicopters as a transport and search and rescue helicopter. While the last batch of Chinese Mi-171s were delivered in 2007, the story of the Chinese ones did not end there. After finding out the weakness of the Mi-171 on mountainous regions, China realized they needed a better engine instead of the original Klimov TV3-117VM. Therefore, after military looked to Rosso-Boronexport again to acquire the newer Mi-171E, which is equipped with the rugged VK2500-03 engine that can withstand mountainous temperatures, orders for the Mi-171E were signed separately in 2009 and also 2012. And for the plant in Sichuan, aside from arming the 171 helicopters, they also helped with modernizing older 17 and 17Vs into 171s. Little to none was known whether the Sichuan plant has domestically produced brand new 171s, although it is certain it possesses the capability to assemble them with Russian-supplied parts. Nowadays, armed 171s were no longer to be seen in China, although in 2019, China had signed a deal with Russia to import Russian-made 171SHs, along with more 171A2s. The SH is an armored and armed version of the 171, based on the Mi-8 AMT-SH assault transport. Starting from 2020, older 171 helicopters are in the process of being replaced by newer Z-20 helicopters. China still retains a fleet of newer 171Es and SH helicopters, but it's likely that China will now favor the Z-20 over the original 171 as a utility helicopter. Among the years of history, China has operated the 17, 17V1, 171, 17V5, 171E, and also the SH. So overall, there is just a lot of them going around. The specific one looking at, though, would have access to either 18 57mm rocket pods, or 7 70mm rocket pods, or 7 90mm rocket pods either, since it has 6 hardpoints on it, being able to carry the tubes. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.